She said she loved me before we even landed. She moved in before I could ask her to. And somehow, she planned our wedding before I ever proposed. By the time I realized what she really wanted, it was almost too late. When I first met Claire, I wasn't looking for anything serious. I'd just come out of a long, drawn-out relationship that left me emotionally drained and, frankly, cynical. So when she bumped into me at the airport lounge, literally, full-on knocked the edge of her carry-on into my knee and apologized with that laugh, I wasn't thinking about fate. Just coffee. We were both flying out of Denver. I was heading to a conference in San Francisco, and she was on her way to visit her half-sister in Oakland. That was the first thing she told me about herself. That her family was complicated, big, blended, and filled with drama. I didn't ask for details. I just smiled and nodded and let her keep talking, mostly because her voice had this warmth to it that made it easy to listen. She ended up sitting beside me on the flight. Total coincidence, or maybe not. At the time, I just chalked it up to luck. What I remember most from that first flight wasn't anything she said. It was how intensely she looked at me when I told her what I did for a living. I run a chain of mid-sized outdoor supply stores. It's not flashy, but it's stable. My dad started it out of a garage, and I'd spent the last decade building it into something real. Claire didn't pretend to know the industry, but she asked smart questions, listened, took mental notes. At the end of the flight, she gave me her number. I gave her mine, already thinking I wouldn't call. I wasn't in the headspace, but she beat me to it. 2 days later, she texted me a photo of a burnt omelet with the caption, Chef of the Year. Please send help. It was stupid, and charming, and human in a way that I'd forgotten people could be. 3 months later, we were inseparable. My friends were suspicious, especially Pete, my business partner and the guy who's been with me since the early days, back when we were fixing up storefronts by hand and using duct tape for everything. He didn't trust how fast it was moving. Said she was too into the idea of us. That she mirrored my life a little too perfectly. Hiked the same trails. Read the same authors. Even claimed to love the same old jazz records I used to play in the office when we worked late. I told him he was being paranoid. She's just present, I said. After everything with Hannah, I need that. And I did. After being with someone who made me feel invisible, Claire was the opposite. She left notes in my truck, picked up my favorite snacks without asking, talked about the future like it was already ours. She brought up marriage early, not in a pushy way, just offhand comments. I think you'd look good in a tux. Or, if we had a daughter, I'd want her to have your eyes. Little things. By month 5, she'd practically moved into my place. Her clothes were in my drawers. Her toothbrush in the bathroom. She cooked, cleaned, even started organizing my mail. At first, I thought it was sweet. Then I noticed she never asked before throwing things away. Like the letter from my lawyer about the business restructuring gone. She said she thought it was junk. I didn't question it. The proposal came on a Monday night. We'd just come back from a weekend at my cabin, the one up north I usually kept private. She loved it there. Said it felt like legacy. I didn't think much of the word at the time. We were on the couch, half watching a documentary. She turned to me, brushed my hair back, and said, "If I asked you to marry me right now, what would you say?" I laughed. Thought she was joking. But her eyes didn't move. "I'm serious, Jake. I want us. I want the real thing. Let's just do it. No games." I hesitated. Not because I didn't care about her, but because something in her urgency felt unfamiliar, off rhythm. And when I asked, "Why now?" she smiled and said, "Because when you know, you know." I told her I needed to think. She didn't argue, just kissed my forehead and said, "I get it. You've been hurt, but I'm not her." And I wanted to believe that. God, I did. But later that night, while she was asleep, I went out to the kitchen for water and saw her phone buzzing on the counter. A name flashed on the screen I didn't recognize. Cynthia, family lawyer. I didn't read the message. Didn't need to. I stood there in the dark, glass in hand, asking myself the one question I hadn't dared ask before. What does she really want from me? The text from the family lawyer kept replaying in the back of my mind like a splinter I couldn't dig out. I didn't open it, but that name Cynthia, family lawyer, was enough to tighten something in my gut. Still, I said nothing. Not then. Maybe I didn't want to know. Maybe some part of me was still so desperate to believe that someone like Claire could love me without a catch. But life has a funny way of forcing clarity. 2 weeks after Claire's late-night proposal, I got the kind of call you always dream about, but never really expect to happen. It was from a private investment firm out of Seattle, Landmeer and Company. I'd met one of their partners years ago at a trade show in Montana. We talked over drinks about scaling mid-tier retail, but nothing ever came of it. Now, suddenly, they wanted to schedule a meeting. I flew up the next morning. First class, all expenses paid. When I walked into their glass-walled conference room, I expected a pitch, maybe a soft offer. What I got was a seat at the table. They laid out their plan, full acquisition of my brand, with me staying on as president of Western operations. They didn't want to gut the stores or replace the staff. They wanted to grow quickly, and they needed someone who knew the terrain. Someone with skin in the game. Someone like me. They offered numbers I hadn't even dared to write down in private. 7 figures up front. Equity in the merged entity. Bonuses based on performance metrics I was already hitting. It was the kind of offer that didn't just change your life, it rewrote your future. I asked for a few days to think. They gave me 48 hours. The flight back was a blur. I stared out the window the entire time, heart racing. It wasn't just the money. It was the validation. The idea that every late night, every risk, every screw-up I'd survived had led to this. And as the plane touched down, my mind didn't go to celebration. It went to Claire. I wasn't proud of the thought, but it came sharp and involuntary. If she's playing some game with my assets, this just changed the stakes. When I walked through the front door, she was sitting cross-legged on the rug, sorting through a pile of photos from our last hiking trip. The house smelled like sage and garlic. She'd cooked. My favorite, of course. She looked up and smiled like nothing had shifted in the universe. You're glowing, she said, teasing. Either that or you're having a stroke. I forced a laugh. Big meeting. Might have changed everything. She tilted her head. Changed how? I sat down across from her and watched her eyes carefully. I got an offer. To sell. She blinked. Sell the business? Not completely. They want me to stay on in a leadership role. But yeah, it'd mean letting go of majority control. She stared at me, lips parted just slightly. Then she smiled. Big. Too big. Jake, that's amazing. She got up and wrapped her arms around me, kissing my forehead just like she had that night. Only this time, it didn't feel intimate. It felt ceremonial. I wanted to pull back, but I didn't. She leaned in, chin resting on my shoulder. So, does this mean I'll be engaged to a millionaire? The way she said it, it was light, playful, but something in her tone felt rehearsed. Like she'd already run that line through her head a dozen times. I didn't answer. That night, while she slept, I opened her phone. I hadn't done that before. Even after everything with Hannah, I promised myself I wouldn't be that guy. But this was different. I needed to know what game I was in, or if I was even still a player. The passcode was her birthday. She never changed it. I didn't go to the messages first. I went straight to her email. She had a folder labeled Personal, Claire Only. Real subtle. Inside were several threads. Some were innocuous, old family stuff, apartment leases. But one thread caught my eye. It was from that same lawyer, Cynthia Alden. The subject line read, Prenup plus ownership questions. I opened it. Most of it was legal jargon, but the part that made my chest go cold was one line from Claire's response. If we're married before the acquisition finalizes, would that impact access to future disbursements and shared marital property under Colorado law? The reply was even worse. Yes. Timing is crucial. If the marriage occurs beforehand, you may be entitled to a significant portion of post-acquisition assets, especially if no prenup is in place. That was 2 days before she proposed to me. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember the weight in my chest, the nausea, the steady realization that everything I thought had been organic, the timing, the affection, the proposal, had a ledger underneath it. The next morning, I told her I needed to think about the offer some more. She kissed my cheek and said, "Of course. Just don't take too long." By the end of the week, I accepted the deal. The press release dropped Monday morning. Claire had made breakfast, scrambled eggs and avocado toast. She'd even arranged little slices of blood orange on the plate. When I sat down, she handed me a printed copy of the announcement, like it was a wedding invitation. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "We're going to have such an incredible life." I looked at her. Really looked. Everything about her was perfect on paper. Gorgeous, charming, emotionally intelligent. She'd integrated herself into every part of my life like ivy on old brick. And now she was tying herself to my success like it was a joint victory. But the game wasn't over yet. There was one thing she didn't know. I'd already hired a lawyer. Quietly, carefully. And I told him one thing. I needed a prenup drafted yesterday. Bulletproof. Ironclad. Retroactive if possible. And I needed it ready before I even mentioned the word engagement again. Let her push. Let her think she was close. Because the worst kind of betrayal isn't loud. It's calculated. And this time, I was ready to play. The prenup was finished within days. My lawyer, Alan, had worked with estate-level clients for decades. Wealthy ranchers, tech founders, people with more assets than trust in their partners. He didn't ask for details, just nodded slowly when I said I needed it airtight. "No emotions in contracts, Jake," he told me. "Just leverage. You keep that. You stay ahead." Claire had no idea it was coming. I made sure of that. Let her plan our weekends. Let her talk about what color suit I'd look best in, or whether we'd elope to the coast or do something intimate at the cabin. I nodded through it all. Smiled when she wanted to tour wedding venues, just for fun. But I didn't propose. Not yet. Instead, I told her I wanted to take her on a trip. A getaway to celebrate the deal, just the two of us. No distractions. She lit up, practically bounced on her toes when I told her we were going to Jackson Hole. "God, I've always wanted to go," she said. "Wait, are we skiing? We can do whatever you want." That weekend, I slipped the prenup into my bag like it was just another pair of gloves. Alan had printed it on heavy paper, bound it like a small book. It even felt expensive. Claire packed light, like always. All designer brands, none of which I'd ever seen receipts for. She said she used to do brand partnerships before we met, got sent free stuff all the time. I never pressed her on it. At the resort, I waited until the second night, after the wine, after the wood-burning fireplace in the $1,000 view. She was in a robe, curled up on the couch, when I set the envelope in her lap. She looked down, confused, then smiled. "Is this it?" "Yeah," I said, "but I need you to read it first. Thoroughly." She laughed lightly, then realized I wasn't joking. Her fingers hesitated on the seal. "A prenup. You've brought up marriage, Claire. So have I. If this is where we're headed, we need to be smart. Protect what we've built. Both of us." She didn't open it. Just stared at me, eyes narrowed slightly. "So you don't trust me?" "I trust you enough to want to make this work." Silence. For too long. She finally stood, took the prenup into the bedroom, and didn't come out for almost an hour. When she did, her voice was calm. "Practiced." "Okay," she said. "Let's go through it together." I wasn't expecting that. I thought she'd push back harder, make it a fight. But she didn't. She played it cool, asked a few generic questions about legal phrasing, smiled when I said she could keep her own assets too if she disclosed them. She signed. And just like that, it was done. We flew back Monday morning. I was still bracing for some kind of backlash, waiting for the mask to slip. But she didn't flinch. If anything, she turned sweeter, warmer. She even started calling my mom more often, asking about family recipes, offering to help organize an early holiday gathering at the house. It felt like she was doubling down, like she'd decided the long game was still worth playing. Maybe she thought she could outlast the prenup, find a new angle, get me to amend it later. But I started digging. It began small, asking a friend in Denver PD to run her name through a public database. I wasn't expecting anything major, maybe a traffic ticket. Instead, he sent me a file the next morning with one line highlighted. Claire Simone Hargrove, legal name change, 2019. Formerly, Clara and Redmond. That alone wasn't damning. People change names. But it raised a question she'd never answered. And when I searched the old name online, I found more than I bargained for. Clara Redmond had been listed as a silent partner in a boutique interior design company that went under in 2018. There was a messy legal dispute between the lead designer and an investor who'd allegedly tried to claim majority ownership after faking invoices and inflating contributions. No charges filed. No hard evidence. But the description matched her too closely. I stared at the article, numb. It wasn't just the prenup. It wasn't the money. She'd done this before. Later that night, I asked her about her name casually. Said something about how Claire Hargrove sounds like a movie character. She smiled. My mom's maiden name. Thought it sounded cleaner when I started freelancing. She didn't even blink. And maybe that's what scared me most. How smooth she was. The next morning, I made the mistake of checking my office camera feed from home. We use a simple system, just a couple cameras in the hallway and entrance for security. But one file caught my eye. A Saturday. I hadn't been in that day. But Claire had. She had a key. I'd given it to her back when things felt safe. The footage showed her entering just after noon. She walked straight to my office and closed the door. 10 minutes later, she left, holding nothing. But on my desk that week, I'd been missing a file. A single, non-digital binder, one that detailed private partnerships tied to the acquisition. Names. Percentages. Contingencies. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Assumed I'd misplaced it. Now I wasn't so sure. The last straw came that weekend. Pete and I met for drinks, nothing fancy, just a corner bar we used to frequent back before the money started changing things. He was nursing a beer when he hit me with it. You know she reached out to Emily, right? Emily. I asked. My wife. Said she wanted to surprise you. Asked a ton of questions about the company structure. Asked if your dad had ever formally separated the real estate assets from the store licenses. Weird stuff. My stomach dropped. She wasn't just playing me. She was trying to map the whole infrastructure. Like she already saw herself as part of it. Later that night, when Claire curled up next to me in bed, I stared at the ceiling and asked her something out of nowhere. Did you love him? She shifted. Who? The guy before me. The one you changed your name after. She froze. Not visibly, but I felt it. In the way her breath caught for just half a second. I don't know what you mean. You do. Another pause. Then she sat up slowly and said, I made mistakes before. People took advantage of me. I started over. Isn't that what everyone wants? I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw her clearly. Not the sweet, smiling woman from the airport. Not the woman who made burnt omelets and played Billie Holiday on rainy mornings. Just a shadow in the ledger. Calculated. Cold. I didn't say another word. But I made a silent decision that night. If she was going to play this game again, she was going to learn what it felt like to lose. There's a point in every long con where the con artist stops charming and starts weaving. Subtle, patient, thread by thread, until the target doesn't even realize they're being wrapped up. I watched Claire shift into that mode right in front of me, and I let her. I wanted to see how far she'd go. I needed to. The next few weeks felt like living in a play I hadn't auditioned for. It started with my mother. She and Claire had always gotten along surface level. Friendly text exchanges. A few shared recipes. Polite compliments about haircuts and holiday sweaters. But now, Claire was suddenly everywhere. Dropping off groceries when my mom mentioned having the flu. Helping organize a charity raffle for the church mom still went out of habit. Even signing up to volunteer at the same community garden my dad helped manage before he passed. She's really special, Jake, Mom said over coffee one morning, her tone almost wistful. There's something grounded in her. Like she sees the world through your eyes. I stared into my mug. Yeah, she's got a gift for that. Then came my sister, Erin. Erin's always been harder to win over. She sees through people. Called Hannah a chameleon 6 months before I caught her sexting her ex. Claire knew that. So she didn't try to impress her. She played the opposite. Vulnerable. Curious. Always asking Erin for advice. How to navigate my moods. What kind of ring I might like. Whether I'd want a big wedding or something quiet and intimate, just close family. It worked. Maybe too well. Don't screw this up, Erin told me one night after dinner. She's the real thing. Funny how people can love you their whole lives and still be blind to what's right in front of them. Claire wasn't just building relationships. She was building insulation, making it harder and harder for me to extract myself without tearing everything else apart. Then she found my oldest friend, Ben Harper. We'd been close since high school. Lost touch a bit after college, when he moved to Florida and got into real estate. But we always kept a foot in each other's lives, phone calls every few months, texts on birthdays. He'd never met Claire. Until she tracked him down. Literally. One night she casually mentioned she'd reached out to that friend of yours from Florida. I raised an eyebrow. Ben. Yeah. I figured. Why not? You talk about him all the time, and I'm planning a little surprise for you. He seemed great. You called him. She smiled. Messaged him first. Found his business profile. He got back right away. Something about that chilled me. I called Ben later that night. He answered like nothing was weird. Told me Claire had been super friendly. Asked about how we met, what kind of stuff I liked in college. Said she was planning a gift for our engagement announcement and wanted to make sure it was meaningful. We weren't even engaged. That's when it hit me. She was positioning herself, as if we already were, as if everything was already locked in. And still, I said nothing. I let her keep threading. Then came the business angle. She knew better than to ask for a role outright. Claire's too smart for that. Instead, she started showing up at the office more often. At first, it was innocent. Lunches. Quick drop-ins. But then she started offering to help. Said she had a knack for social media, could help revamp the store branding if I ever wanted. I dismissed it, politely. The next week, she brought in mock-ups. Logos, taglines, influencer strategies. All polished. All impressive. I asked where she got the data. She said she'd done her own market research. But when I checked the files on the flash drive she left behind, I found something else. Buried in the metadata of one of the folders was a name I recognized. Melissa Kent, an ex-employee who'd worked for our biggest competitor until 2 years ago. A woman Claire couldn't have known, unless she'd been contacting people behind my back. That's when I started digging again. Quietly. Strategically. I had Alan hire a private investigator. Discreet. No digital trail. Just one directive, trace Claire's social network. Look for patterns. Old aliases. Money transfers. Any link between her and former employees, former partners, former lives. In the meantime, I let her keep weaving. She started dropping hints about children. It wasn't subtle. "I had this dream last night," she whispered one morning, curled up behind me in bed. "You were holding a baby. A boy. You looked so proud." She said it like it was romantic. I heard it like a siren. "You think you'd ever want kids?" she asked softly. I didn't answer. The next day, I found a parenting book on our nightstand and prenatal vitamins in the cabinet. I confronted her calmly. She laughed. "They're just supplements. My OB said they're good for women in their 30s, even if they're not trying." "I never said we were trying," I said. "You never said we weren't." The thing is, we hadn't slept together in over a week. She'd said she was tired, stressed, but now she was planting seeds. I had Alan add a clause to the prenup, contingencies for pregnancy. It was ugly, and I hated doing it, but I didn't trust anything anymore, not even biology. Then came the final twist. One evening, after dinner with my family, an evening where Claire had charmed everyone so completely it felt like I was invisible, she handed me a stack of envelopes. "What's this?" "Say the dates," she said. "I know we haven't officially set a date, but your mom offered to help with venues, and Aaron already gave me your guest list from college, so I figured, why wait?" I stared at the stack. Dozens of them. All printed. All sealed. Some already stamped. "You had these made without talking to me." She didn't blink. "I just want to be your wife, Jake. Everything else can be figured out later." I felt something crack inside me. Not because I was afraid. Because I realized, finally, that this wasn't love. This was conquest. And Claire didn't fall in love with people. She acquired them. There's a special kind of silence that comes when you realize you've been trapped by your own politeness. The kind of silence where everyone around you is celebrating a future you didn't agree to, toasting your engagement, asking about honeymoon destinations, and you can't scream without becoming the villain in your own story. That's where I was. Claire had steamrolled through every boundary like they were soft suggestions. The venue was booked, some rustic, overpriced vineyard in Telluride. Invitations had been mailed. A wedding website had gone live with our names in gold cursive, photos I didn't know she'd staged, and a carefully crafted story about how we met by chance and chose forever by choice. I hadn't proposed. Not really. But no one seemed to care. Everyone around me accepted the reality she'd curated like it was gospel. Aaron was helping her pick out dresses. My mom was coordinating floral vendors. Even Pete, who once warned me to be careful, had dropped his guard completely. "You've got a good one," he said one night, clapping me on the shoulder. "Don't screw this up, man." By then, I wasn't even angry, just cold, focused, because I knew now that nothing would stop her, unless I did. I spent every night in my study, alone with a notepad, trying to solve the one equation no prenup could fix: how to make everyone see what she was. She was too careful, too clean. The PI hadn't dug up anything explosive, just vague patterns. Rebranded histories. Shell businesses. Emotional wreckage left in her wake, but no documented crimes. Nothing I could take to a court. Nothing I could use to call off the wedding without looking like I'd snapped. She hadn't broken laws. She'd broken people. That's when it hit me. I couldn't expose her legally. I had to expose her publicly. She'd built everything on illusion. Her character, our relationship, the wedding. So I'd let the illusion play out. Let the guests arrive. Let the stage be set. And then I'd do what I should have done the night she handed me those save the dates. I'd burn it all down. But not with fire. With truth. The plan started with a guest list. I had to control who came and who didn't. Luckily, Claire had been so caught up in managing the spectacle that she delegated certain tasks to me. Rehearsal dinner? I was in charge of RSVPs. Transportation? I handled the shuttle coordination. Seating charts? She gave me creative freedom. So I made a few edits. I invited Ben, the one friend who'd always had my back. I made sure my cousin Lauren, a relentless investigator for a Denver paper, had a front row seat. I reached out to Melissa Kent, the former competitor whose documents Claire had mysteriously used. Told her everything. And then, just for good measure, I extended an invitation to Cynthia Alden, Claire's old family lawyer. I wasn't sure she'd come, but curiosity's a strong drug. The night before the wedding, Claire surprised me with a gift. It was a watch, vintage Omega, black leather strap, my initials engraved on the back. She smiled as she fastened it on my wrist. "So you're not late tomorrow." "No excuses." "I won't be," I said. "Promise." She kissed me like we were 16, like nothing was wrong, like the next day was going to be the start of something sacred. And in a way it was. The morning of the wedding, I played my role. Showered, shaved, put on the tailored charcoal suit she'd picked for me. I even let Pete tighten my tie and slap me on the back like we were still kids about to hit prom. But in my breast pocket wasn't a speech. It was a USB drive. A simple, black stick no larger than a finger. On it was everything. The lawyer emails, the metadata from her files, testimonies from 2 of her former business associates, and a short clip of her on office surveillance that most guests wouldn't understand, but that Lauren would. I slipped it into an envelope, sealed it, and labeled it. In case I say I do. The ceremony was set for noon. Outdoor setup. White chairs on the lawn. String quartet playing something from Debussy. The crowd looked like a Pinterest board had thrown up. Lace and linen and carefully styled photo ops. My mom was crying. Erin was smiling. Claire stood at the end of the aisle in a white sheath dress, so fitted it looked like armor. She looked beautiful. She always did. When I walked down the aisle, people stood. Cameras clicked. Someone whispered, "He looks nervous," and someone else said, "That's normal." But I wasn't nervous. I was ready. The officiant began. Words blurred together. Love. Partnership. Vows. Faith. Claire's eyes never left mine. When it came time for her vows, she pulled out a folded piece of paper and spoke like she was reading poetry. I knew from the moment we sat next to each other on that plane that my life was about to change. I saw not just a man, but a partner. A legacy. A home. Legacy. There it was again. When she finished, people applauded quietly. Some wiped tears. Then it was my turn. I reached into my jacket pocket, not for my vows, but for the envelope. I held it up between us like a card I'd been waiting to play. "I don't have vows," I said, "because I think everyone here deserves to know something first." Her eyes flickered. A twitch in her cheek. Just a fraction of a second. I turned to the guests. "This woman," I said calmly, "has told you we're in love. That this is a love story." I looked back at Claire. But it's not. It's a transaction. One she engineered months ago. One she's done before. There were murmurs. A collective shift. I walked over to Lauren in the front row and handed her the envelope. Everything's in there. Names. Documents. Emails. Patterns. Every thread she's pulled to get here. Claire took a step forward. "Jake, what are you?" "No," I said. "You don't get to talk now." The officiant stepped back. The music stopped. Pete looked stunned. My mother stood up, confused. Erin covered her mouth. Claire's expression hardened, just for a moment. Just long enough for those close to see it. Then she spun. Walked down the aisle, heels cracking against the stone path. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't look back. And just like that, the illusion broke. The silence was deafening. But it wasn't the silence of politeness anymore. It was truth. The aftermath of pulling the pin on a grenade like that doesn't come all at once. It arrives in waves, disbelief, confusion, silence thick as smoke. At first, no one moved. Guests stayed in their chairs like they weren't sure whether the ceremony was still happening or if they were witnessing a breakdown. Maybe some thought it was a stunt, a cruel prank. But then Claire turned and walked away. Not tearful, not humiliated, just gone. And that's when reality cracked open. Lauren didn't hesitate. She stood right there, ripped the envelope open, and plugged the USB into her tablet. She didn't wait for explanations. She started scrolling. Her face turned hard within seconds. "Holy hell," she muttered. People gathered around. Pete leaned over her shoulder. My mother came up beside me, her face pale and tight. "Jake, what is this?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer. I couldn't, not yet. I just watched the screen as Lauren opened one file after another. The emails from Cynthia Alden. The prenup strategies. Metadata showing Claire's tampering with internal business documents. Statements from Melissa Kent and another man, an ex-fiancé in Seattle who claimed Claire drained his business account before vanishing overnight. The truth was laid bare. My voice finally came back to me. "She's done this before," I said. "She targets people, men, with assets, ingratiates herself into their lives, then manipulates the legal structures around them. And when she's got what she needs, she walks, or takes everything with her." My mom's hand went to her mouth. Erin sank into the nearest chair like someone had punched her in the gut. It took 10 minutes for the whispers to spread, 30 for the guests to leave in clusters, hushed and stunned. An hour before Pete came up to me, eyes filled with guilt. "I should have trusted my instincts," he said. "I'm sorry, man." "You saw what she wanted you to see," I replied. "We all did." Claire didn't return to the venue that day, or the next. Her phone went dark. Social media accounts gone. Email addresses wiped. Credit cards canceled. The Claire Hargrove I knew didn't exist anymore. She'd gone full ghost. And that told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't humiliated. She was regrouping. But she'd made a mistake. She underestimated the people in the room, especially Lauren. By Monday morning, Lauren had turned the contents of the USB into a full investigative brief. She didn't publish it yet, but she knew who to send it to. Cynthia Alden, the family lawyer, cooperated immediately. She admitted to years of gray area consultations with Claire under various names. Lauren also flagged something I hadn't seen: irregularities in Claire's old business filings. She'd registered 3 LLCs in Colorado under 2 separate identities. At least one had ties to fraudulent invoices submitted during her time with the design firm that imploded in 2018. The house of cards started collapsing. 2 weeks after the aborted wedding, I got a call from Detective Marquez with the Financial Crimes Unit. "We received a formal referral from your cousin and the DA's office," he said. "We've opened a fraud and identity theft investigation into Ms. Hargrove, also known as Clara in Redmond, and possibly operating under other aliases. They already had a warrant out for questioning. Do you know where she is?" "I don't think she wants to be found," I said. Marquez chuckled dryly. "People like her always think they're smarter than the system. That arrogance leaves fingerprints." And it did. The police tracked her down through a wire transfer she attempted from a digital account she forgot to shut down. She tried to reroute funds to a friend's shell business out of Austin. They arrested her in a private rental home outside Santa Fe, same robe, same smile. When I saw the mugshot, I felt nothing. No victory. No relief. Just the hollow weight of reality finally catching up to performance. The charges weren't small. Wire fraud, identity theft, criminal impersonation, interference with business operations. And while some of the evidence was circumstantial, enough of it stuck. She posted bail 2 days later, someone else fronted it, and disappeared again. But this time, her name followed her. Lauren ran a full expose in her paper. It went viral within hours. Not sensationalized. Just facts. Documents. Testimonies. A timeline. Claire's photos side by side with Clara's, names laid bare. Victims came out of the woodwork, one from Arizona, another from Nashville, a man from Chicago who said she'd emptied his family trust and left a suicide note she never followed through on. The public tore through her story like meat off bone. People I hadn't spoken to in years called me. Old friends. Colleagues. Even investors who once saw me as just another mid-tier success story. They didn't just offer support, they offered respect. You handled that with restraint, one told me. That kind of poise? That's rare. It wasn't poise. It was necessity. In private, things were harder. My mom cried for days, not for Claire, but for me. Aaron apologized a dozen times. Pete offered to help me burn what was left of the wedding decorations. We did. A few bottles in, he said, "You're the last guy I thought would get played." I wasn't played, I said. I was studied. The difference matters. Because love is messy, impulsive. Real love doesn't come with agendas and legal strategies. Claire didn't love anyone. She mimicked it. Weeks passed. The season changed. I went back to work. Restructured things. Moved some assets. Cut ties where needed. I started sleeping again. Not deeply, not every night, but enough. The cabin she loved? I sold it. The airport where we met? I avoid the terminal now. But I kept the watch. Not because of her. Because I want to remember the moment right before everything turned. That tight second when I knew the mask was about to slip. When I chose to stop pretending. People still ask why I waited so long. Why I didn't run sooner. Simple. I needed everyone to see it. To see her clearly. Because some betrayals don't hurt the most when they happen. They hurt when no one believes you. And some justice can't be handed to you. You have to build it, piece by piece, and let the liar walk right into it. Which she did. Willingly. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next confession. Until next time, take care and watch who you trust.